It's unfortunately the case every year. We have to say goodbye to scores of athletes and coaches that we had watched perform on fields or inside arenas or rinks over the past several decades, and that was certainly the case in 2023. We lost several dozen prominent folks from the sports world. The NHL lost a handful of memorable players, including one of the very best of all time, longtime Chicago Blackhawks great Bobby Hull, the Golden Jet. Also, Peter Klima, Henry Boucher, Gina Odchik, who spent parts of 2 seasons with the Flyers, and former Flyers goaltender Roman Cechmanek, who was just 52 when he died in November. From the basketball world, we said goodbye to longtime college hoops broadcaster Billy Packer. Players Walter Davis, Phil Sellers, Jumpin' Johnny Green. He played 14 seasons in the NBA, including a couple with the Sixers in the late 1960s. Eric Montross, who also made a pit stop with the 76ers, plus Chris Ford, who played his college ball at Villanova and then had a long NBA career as both a player and coach, including time as an interim coach with the 76ers. Legendary Louisville coach Denny Crum passed away. And, of course, we also lost another legendary coach, the great Bob Knight. You may have loved him, you may have hated him, but he was certainly one to remember, Bobby Knight. Plus, we lost terrific New York Knicks center Willis Reed, who led the Knicks to their last 2 NBA titles in 1969 and 73. And Philadelphia fans know that we, less than a month ago, said goodbye to the great George McGinnis, a Sixers forward for 3 seasons in the mid to late 1970s. Oh, it wasn't just the 4 major sports that lost memorable names. The wrestling world bade farewell to Terry Funk, the Iron Sheik, Jay Briscoe, Bray Wyatt, and superstar Billy Graham. Daredevil Robbie Knievel was known for his death-defying stunts, but he couldn't overcome pancreatic cancer and died last January at the age of 60. And then just last week, we lost NASCAR legend Cale Yarborough. Major League Baseball certainly suffered a huge share of losses. The names included Sal Bando, Jesus Salou, Joe Pepitone, Mike Shannon, sluggers Nate Colbert and Frank Howard, Roger Craig, and baseball's last great knuckleballer Tim Wakefield, plus 6-time All-Star Vida Blue. Septuagenarian Philly fans will remember the name Frank Thomas, who played a season and a half with the Phils, 1964 and part of 65, but he was waived after getting into a fight with young Phil slugger Richie Dick Allen. Thomas died last January at the age of 93. Among other former Phils that left us last year, shortstop Dick Groat, who played several years for the Pirates as well, reliever Willie Hernandez, who after being traded to Detroit in the spring of 1984, ended up winning both the Cy Young Award and AL MVP as a Tiger that season. Pat Corrales managed the Phillies in 1982 and half of 83. You may remember he was fired while the Phils were in first place. And Tim McCarver passed last February. McCarver not only had a long playing career, very long, he was Steve Carlton's personal catcher for a time. He was also a respected broadcaster for many years. Perhaps the biggest name, though, of baseball greats who left us over the last year would be the guy considered by many to be the greatest defensive third baseman ever, Baltimore Orioles legend Brooks Robinson. 23 seasons with the O's, an 18-time All-Star, and 16 Gold Gloves. Wow. The list of former football players and coaches that left us over the course of the year is always a very lengthy one, it seems. Bigger rosters and such a demanding sport. You'll remember most of these names, certainly. Bobby Beathard, Gil Brandt, Vince Tobin, longtime NFL head of officiating, and Philadelphia native Art McNally. Charles White, that nasty Conrad Dobler, kicker Jim Turner, quarterback Joe Kapp, John Brockington, receivers Homer Jones, Otis Taylor, and Mike Williams, and tight ends Russ Francis and Philadelphia-born Frank Wycheck, plus former Eagles linebacker Frank LeMaster. Now, the even bigger names from football that we lost, well, longtime Vikings head coach Bud Grant, who died last March at age 95. You may not know this, but Grant played 2 seasons for the Eagles in the early 1950s, the first as a defensive end, the second as a wide receiver. No kidding. When you think of great NFL linebackers, well, this Hall of Famer is certainly in everybody's top 10, maybe even top 5. Chicago Bears great Dick Butkus, who left us in November at the age of 80. We also lost former Eagles and Rams linebacker Maxie Bond, who helped the Birds win the NFL championship in 1960. And speaking of Eagles greats, Bob Boomer Brown died last June at the age of 81. The Hall of Fame offensive tackle was a first-team All-Pro 5 times, including 3 years as an Eagle. There's one name I didn't mention yet, probably the very biggest name the sports world lost in 2023, the great Jim Brown, who played his 9-year NFL career with the old Cleveland Browns, leading the league in rushing in 8 of those seasons, and still today is considered by many to be the very best running back ever. He was also an actor, and in the decades that followed, a prominent civil rights activist. Rest in peace, all the players and coaches, broadcasters, etc., that we lost in 2023, and thanks for the memories.